as the hashtag says, at balance for better. Okay, and really, I'm just going to read this, and this is not something that I wrote, but rather it is from the international organization. So the future is exciting. Let's build a gender-balanced world. Everyone has a part to play, all the time, everywhere. From grassroots activism to worldwide action, we are entering an exciting period of history where the world expects balance. We notice its absence and celebrate its presence. Balance drives a better working world. Let's all help create at balance for better. Now, I'm going to ask everybody just to stand. You know, this is really goofy. And we're going to do what is what they're saying we should all do. So we're going to do a balance for better. I know this is stupid. And if you just, worse, I'm going to grab a picture of you guys. Okay? Worse. Oh no, she faked us out. Okay, so are we all doing balance for better? Thank you. So, thank you. And one of our panelists stopped up and attest. Have you ever done business with Walmart back in the day?
Kind of. Not direct.
So, for those of you who know, I used to be in the apparel industry, and I used to one of our customers was Walmart, and they would have a 3,000 or 4,000 audience, and they would make you do the Walmart cheer. And you'd give me a WWA, and then at one point they would say, give me the squiggle. And you would see 50-year-old vice presidents going like this. Okay? So the fact that you just had to do this is like really getting off easy. Okay? So I would like to give it to our moderator, Danielle Francovilla, who is graduating this year. She is a comm arts major. And currently she is interning at the local NBC station, and her goal, and I think what she's managed to do so far, is to be an on-air journalist. So let's give her a round of applause.
Thank you. Good morning. It's very amazing to be in a room full of students, staff, alumni, and friends, all here at the college, to speak about issues that women face and overcome in the entrepreneurial world. I'm very proud to be moderating this event celebrating International Women's Day. Panelists, if you may, just briefly introduce yourself so our students know who you are and give them some context.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Great. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you to St. Francis and to Danielle for hosting, and what a great event and reason for gathering everyone. My name is Lindsay Ullman. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Umbrella. We are a marketplace that helps people over 65 take care of their homes so they can stay in them for the long term. The majority of the people who work through Umbrella are recent retirees, so these are retired police officers and firefighters and tradespeople and others who want to stay busy and give back and to get a real sense of purpose and meaning by doing work for people who need an extra hand. So we're a venture-backed company, which means we have investors who put money into our business in the belief that we'll hopefully build a really big company. We're about 20 people. We launched last year. We're about 20 people based here in Brooklyn, in Dumbo. So if you find yourself in Dumbo, come visit us at 55 Washington. Sort of for context, before that, I worked at places like Google and Product. I was an investor in other startups, and then got the chance to start Umbrella just a bit over a year ago.
Hi, I'm Jocelyn Rainey. I am the Chief Administrative Officer for the Brooklyn Navy Yard Development Corporation. The Brooklyn Navy Yard is a property owned by the City of New York on the Brooklyn waterfront. The Navy Yard Development Corporation, what we do is we develop that property. We are a nonprofit, which is not the norm for development companies. So as a nonprofit and a mission-driven nonprofit, what we think about is how do we help small tech manufacturing design companies to grow so that the economic impact can also help the community that's outside of the walls of the yard. And so one way that we do that is we think a lot about how do we make sure that the people who live in Brooklyn, who live right outside of the yard, are able to come onto the yard for job opportunities. And the reason why we choose those particular industries is because they are the industries that help people to get to the middle class faster. They are the industries that are the most coveted right now around tech and design and manufacturing. And they're also industries where there are less barriers to access, right? So if you're a tech person, you can probably start out without having a 4-year degree and grow and grow in your role. So we feel really passionate about the work that we do, and in order to create that economic opportunity for people outside the yard, we really have to help small businesses to grow. So we think a lot about, and we curate, like, who are the businesses that are in the yard? Are they going to be open to hiring people who live in the community? Are they going to be open to hiring people of color? Are they going to be open to hiring women? So that's really, really important to us. So we think about how these issues that small businesses deal with every single day in order for us to assist them in their growth.
Saudia Davis. I'm the CEO and founder of Greenhouse Eco Cleaning. We are a green and commercial, we're a residential and commercial cleaning company providing services in Brooklyn, Manhattan, and Queens primarily. We have about 45 employees currently servicing these areas. I started the business in 2006 following the passing of my grandmother, who was a professional cleaner. And it was speculated that it was due to years of her using really harsh cleaning chemicals. And as a result, for me, it was how do we provide healthy jobs for people from underserved communities. I'm also an immigrant, so we have a heavy, a large immigrant population in our organization. And so a lot of our mission, in a sense, is yes, to provide cleaning, but also to how to provide resources and help to them in the community. And so we do work with a lot of different programs, like the Navy Yard, for instance, utilizing resources as well.
This might be too loud. Hi everyone, my name is Sapna Shah. I am an angel investor. I invest in retail tech, fashion tech, marketplace, e-commerce, and digital native brands. Prior to that, I spent a lot of time in retail, which is why I really focus on that space. I've been an entrepreneur, I've worked at big corporates, and Ida alluded to before. I spend a lot of my time advising young startups through a program called Retail X Series, which is a monthly event series that I run that helps founders learn from later stage founders, which has been really a passion project for me and also a great way for me to grow out and meet entrepreneurs. And I'm excited to be here. Looking forward to the conversation. My name is Marie Sagaris, and some of you may know me as an assistant professor here at St. Francis in the Management and Information Technology Department. I'm also the director of our MS in Management, and I'm also an entrepreneur. Unlike some of the other businesses here, I'm a solopreneur, so my business is entirely staffed and run by myself. And I have a business for about the past 11 years. I work in the craft space, so I'm a digital content creator. I predominantly create patterns and tutorials in crochet and knitting that either are self-published and monetized through advertising and affiliate sales and sponsorships, or I publish through third-party organizations on a freelance basis. Prior to that, my background and sort of reason I came into this is my mother is an entrepreneur, and I grew up in a very entrepreneurial family. And as a result, I never wanted to be an entrepreneur because I used to always say, entrepreneurs, everyone is their boss. So I actually was an intrapreneur for the first part of my career, about 20 years. I worked in nonprofit organizations, helping them to launch and build new programs. So that is sort of my other entrepreneurial experience.
So something that I picked up from what all the women said is, most of them, there's a reason why all of them have done this. So whether it was your grandmother or your grandfather, they found that reason that was important to them, something that was central to their life, and then decided to start a business with it. And so I guess the one thing that I would say to you guys, a big takeaway after only hearing, 5 minutes, is what is that big thing for you? So is it that your grandmother was, into cleaning and you're like, wait, I want to do, clean products? Or is it that you want to help the aging community because you have a grandfather that you love? And so I would just say find what that is, and maybe that's how you start to become an entrepreneur. My first question, a little more for Marie, Lindsay, and Sadia. Did being a woman impact your decision to become an entrepreneur? And if so, talk a little bit about that. And then Sapna, can you tell us how being a woman did or did not present challenges as a venture capitalist?
I can start. So it definitely influenced me because being a woman, I have suffered from lower wages than my male counterparts for a large part of my career. And so I've often had to supplement my income with outside work. And so at some point I realized rather than working part-time in addition to working full-time, I could control my own schedule, I could do the type of work that I enjoy, and I could make an impact in the way that I want by having my own business that was flexible enough for me and where I could earn as much income on the side as I need. And then as I've been more successful in negotiating salaries and so forth, maybe I don't need the side income as much, but I still enjoy having that business, and it helps me to be able to do other things I want in my life. So for me, that definitely is influenced by being a woman.
And what was that like? Because, men as well, you may be in school and working a few jobs to be an entrepreneur. So what was that struggle like to be like, okay, well, this is my passion and I want to do it, but it's not paying well, so I also have to work at the grocery store or retail or, what pays the bills? What was that struggle like?
Well, I still have the struggle today because I work here full-time. I also am in school getting my doctoral degree, and I also have my business that's part-time on the side. So for me, I'm a person, I like to do things different every day. I don't like a lot of repetition. So I enjoy that because I can, every day is different. I can do different things. When I'm feeling more creative, I can focus more on my business. When I'm feeling more like I need to work on more structured tasks, I can work on other types of things. So it allows me flexibility in different types of activities, but it's also stressful, and you have to realize that certain parts of your life you can't focus as much on. Like perhaps your personal life is going to suffer. You can't always go do things with your friends, or even sometimes with family if you have other commitments. But when you work full-time and you work part-time and you have a side business, you also have more financial security, which for me is important. If you just quit your job and you start a business, it doesn't always earn money right away. And so for a lot of people, what I've seen is that's caused them actually to close down their business sooner because they didn't have enough money to get through that initial launch. So for me, having that financial security has actually allowed my business to last longer than some of my colleagues.
Thank you.
So, so my paternal grandmother, so not the reason why I started the business, we lived with her growing up, when I was growing up, and she owned a fabric company, a large fabric company in Jamaica. And so for me, growing up with that, I never really thought about being a woman in business was an issue at all. I think that as I grew my career, my past career, I was in film, so I was a publicist for movies and for celebrities. And so that was, for me, the first time I really realized that there was a hindrance to actually growing in your career as a woman, that I could run a department but wouldn't get a title. Those sort of challenges came up, and that was also a part of the reason why I decided, you know what, I'm gonna promote myself instead of waiting for someone to promote me. And I knew I had the skill set. I knew I could do better than what was presented for me. And so that has been a part of the evolution of how do you take off, those boundaries that other people sort of place on you and just sort of live in your truth and live for your own talent and what you're good at and believing in yourself in that way. I think in business currently, owning a cleaning company, I'll walk into meetings with, large organizations and they will expect a man to show up because the majority of the cleaning companies in the city are owned by men. But I find it interesting that sometimes they will second guess me, and I was like, who does most of the cleaning in your house? Because chances are it's the woman. So for me, it's more fitting than in some, way, the irony of it, that I'm sitting here owning a cleaning company, but yet still you're expecting a man to show up to tell you that this is, this is the way you clean this, or this is the way you clean that. So, I think it shows up in different ways as you progress in your career. I don't sort of think about it on a day-to-day basis. I have an all-female management team, so we're just sort of moving ahead. It's our norm. I think in other organizations it's not, but for us and the organization that I've built, it's the norm.
I think it certainly influenced my decision, but maybe in ways that I didn't expect. So prior to starting Umbrella, I worked at a venture firm, so I was investing and working with entrepreneurs, and almost all of the entrepreneurs that I got to know were men. And I think the thing that afforded me, and this has also changed a huge amount, by the way. It's incredibly inspiring how many amazing women there are who are starting and running great companies. But I think the thing that helped me realize was on a regular basis, I was getting to know people who are starting many successful companies. A lot of them are companies that you've probably heard of or used. And I think there can be this allure to founders and to people who start companies, and it seems like they have it all figured out. They have all the answers at the get-go. They're always so smart and so talented. And what I got to see was a bunch of people who were really capable, who were solving really hard problems, who a lot of the time had no idea what they were doing. And so whether they're men, women, whatever, they were figuring it out. They had to have the endurance and the determination and sort of the vision to be able to figure it out, but it's not like they were perfectly formed people with all the answers. And so I think getting to see that gave me maybe the license or the permission to say they don't have it figured out, and I'm pretty smart, and so probably I can figure it out. And then there was some fuel for sure in that these were all men, and I love working with great entrepreneurial men, but gosh darn it, don't we need a whole lot of other people at the table? By the time we actually started our business, I was spending much more time thinking about how does the business model work? How are we going to find customers? How much capital do we need? But I think in the back of my mind, even day to day, I think being one of the, I think there's real fuel to the fire of being someone who maybe looks a little bit different than other people who've done this before, and I find that really energizing, actually. And it's also our opportunity. People who look different and maybe don't look like every other founder see things differently. And it means you're going to build companies with ideas that maybe other people haven't thought of before.
So I think one of the big takeaways just from what a few of the ladies said is if there's not somebody to do it yourself. And even if there is somebody to do it yourself. So something that women are going to face a lot is not being able to do it. There's not that role for you yet. Make that role, right? So Sapna, can you tell us a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, I would echo that on the investment side, actually. When I first started investing 5.5 years ago, I didn't know a lot of female investors who were investing in the early stage companies, and I joined an angel group here in New York, and there were 123 members at that time, of which 11 were women. We got up to 18, I think, at one point, and then that number's gone back down for a variety of reasons. But, you walk into the room full of people who don't look like you. And by the way, most of the investors in that room were also white, so I was different on 2 counts. And I'm also short, so that was not good either. Everybody was really tall in that room. So I think it was the same kind of thing. There's an opportunity. I think I agree with Lindsay. There's an opportunity in being different. And I think I was able to capitalize on that. But it was challenging those early years. I will say, like a few people here are alluding to, is that I think there are more female founders who are starting businesses. I think there are more angels and early stage funds and even later stage funds who are investing in female and underrepresented founders and are making it a point to do so. And there was a new one just announced yesterday. So, I think we're starting to see a real change. 30% of new angel investors who started investing in the last 2 years are women. So, when you think about that kind of growth at this stage, I think we'll see it throughout the ecosystem. So, I think those challenges are becoming a little bit easier. They're not completely gone, but it's certainly easier than it was when I first started.
So, there may never be somebody that looks like you in the room, or there may not be a lot of people that look like you in the room, but that's okay. That's something that I think we all face, every woman probably faces at some point. Being a journalist, I was once told that I need to wear a dress every day, because that's what people do in the field. And I said, well, I will be the first journalist to not wear a dress every day then, if that's what that is. And so I think that's kind of, that's how I took this, but I think we all have our story of that. Like, is there always a lot of African Americans in the room? Maybe not, but that's okay. Capitalize on that. Be the only African American in the room and do good. So my next question is for Jocelyn. So how many BNY businesses are women-led, and has this number grown in the last 5 years? And then what do you predict for the next 5 to 10 years?
So the number has definitely grown in the last 5 years. We have just recently started capturing those numbers in a real way. So there's 73 women-owned businesses on the Yard, while there's almost 400 businesses. And so I do predict, or I know that these numbers are going to grow, because that's not great, right? It's not great. Is that we're very intentional about how we market and look for women-owned businesses. So we actually have events where we invite MWBEs, minority and women-owned businesses, to kind of talk to them about our properties and to help them understand the ways that we subsidize our rents, the ways that we think about this business in order to kind of attract them to the Navy Yard. So we also have a rubric, and this is something that's really important to kind of think about, is like, whatever you do in your work, even if it's not owning your own business, and I'm sure that everyone here feels the same way, there has to be a sense of intentionality about how you do your work. You can't just say, I'm going to do this, or I'm going to hit this number. It's like, and then no matter where you sit in the corporation, you have to hold people to the things that attracted you to that job. So what attracted me to the Navy Yard is their commitment to this kind of work, the realness of it, right? So one of the things that we do, because we think about this as a group, is that we have a rubric for all new businesses. And the things that we look for are you going to hire from the community? How many employees do you have? How many job openings do you have? And then, are you an MWBE? Are you a minority or woman-owned business? And we hold ourselves accountable to that rubric, because we understand that these things won't happen just because we talk about it. These things only happen if you actually do the work. So you have to be, and I always use this word, and I don't know if it's a real word, but you have to be purposeful about these kinds of things. You have to know the statistics, you have to know the data, and then you have to be purposeful about how you get to that number. So today, to answer your question, I don't think we're nowhere where we want to be, but I do know that as we grow, we're going through our largest expansion. Over 9,000 people come to the Yard every day to work, believe it or not. I don't know if any of you have been there, but you should. And we're going to grow that to over 20,000 people coming there to work in the next 5 years. So with that, we're trying to attract more women-owned businesses.
So I think that speaks just for the world, right? Women weren't so accepted and didn't have all the things that we wanted 100 years ago, but look at how far we've come even in the last 10 years, and we still have a way to go. And then something else that I took from that is, if you can check all the boxes, so if to get to point Z, you have to do A through every other letter, check all those boxes, and don't be discouraged that because you're a woman, these places aren't going to fund you, aren't going to invest in you. And that doesn't just mean monetary, just investing in you. So check those boxes, do the work, and there are places that are specifically looking to fund women businesses. So my next question is a little general. You can all kind of answer in your own way through your experiences. I just would like you to talk a little bit about the common misconceptions that about female founders, or that female founders face. So whether you've experienced it or seen somebody else experience it, how that happens and how we can combat that.
So one of the common misconceptions, I think, that I hear a lot of male investors say about women founders is that they don't think big enough, or their business does not have the capacity to get big enough, or their market is too small. A lot of times that's because the investor doesn't know that market, right? So whether it is something that's like the wedding industry, or consumer products that women use versus what men buy, or whether it's something that's in women's health, right? If women are 51% of the country, that's a pretty big market, right? So I think that, you see a lot of founders that there's like a founder-investor mismatch because the investor doesn't understand the market and says, oh, that's too niche, that's too small of a market, that's never going to be big. The great thing about having women invest in women is you see the problem right away. Like, yes, I see these products, kids products, baby food that's organic and like healthy. That is a big market, and moms do care about that, right? So I think we're starting to see, with more success from female founders in these kinds of categories, I think we're starting to see that shift a little bit, but I think it's still something that continues to happen.
And I want to piggyback on that a little bit, thinking about, small women businesses. And it's really, most small businesses are not going to get conventional funding, right? So thinking about capital ventures and venture capitalists and angel investors are really important for small businesses. But also understanding that these investors are also thinking about investing in people from their tribe, or people who remind them of them in either the work or in look, right? So if someone is MIT graduate, they might be thinking, I'm going to invest in businesses that other MIT graduates are growing. So thinking about how you show up as a woman or a minority is really important. And when they think about you thinking small, it's really important that if you're a small business, that when you're in front of these investors, and you should be supporting investors that look like you, right? Like, so really thinking about how do you, I'm talking about joining an angel group, right? Like thinking about, can you join an angel investor group? Can you have another person in that group that looks like you that could be that voice is really important. But as a business, asking for what you need. Even if you think what you need is too much, it shows that you have that scale of thinking around your product, that you believe in it. Because sometimes what women do, and we all do this, because I know that some of my issues in regards to negotiating wages is that I didn't think I could ask for that. It took me actually being in human resources, working with white men who would walk away from a deal if they didn't get what they wanted, to understand that, oh, I could actually ask for that. I could ask for what I'm worth. I could ask for what I need, because you can't make your deals on the back end. So if you go to an investor and you ask for $45,000 and tomorrow you need $100,000, you've already asked for 45, and that's what you're gonna get. So really thinking about, what do I need, and asking for what you need, and if that investor isn't willing to give it to you, then you might have to go to the next investor and think about how creating your own networks.
Anybody else have anything to add on that?
I was just going to add that, in my space of most of the people that have businesses like mine are women, and I think most of them have bootstrapped their own businesses, so they basically grow them slowly. Like people were saying, they're thinking small, but it's not that they're thinking small. They have ideas, but they don't want to necessarily go into debt. They don't want to give up ownership of their business, so they don't want somebody else to tell them what to do, or be overly involved in the decision making, or take too much of their profits. And so in a way, for a lot of these women, they see entrepreneurship, even if they grow slowly, that they can still get to that income level that they wouldn't be able to necessarily achieve in the labor market because of the misconceptions. And because sometimes even when they do go in and try to negotiate, maybe that negotiation is not taken well in terms of salary negotiations, but as the owner of their own business, they can negotiate in a different way, you know, and they have a little bit more authority in those negotiations. So they may find that they can earn a lot more running their own business and negotiating on their own behalf than they can within a conventional employment structure.
So I would say the big takeaway is, as females, we do think big enough. Leverage your differences and always ask, even when it's about your wage. So my next question can really apply to anybody, but specifically for women, what are some tools, apps, books, podcasts, and so forth that you would recommend to anybody trying to start her own business?
So the stuff that I've found to be the most useful is probably more business specific, and so I think it's going to vary a little bit based on the person and the idea that you're working on. Generally, one book that I've really liked is a book by an investor named Ben Horowitz, who is also an entrepreneur. It's called The Hard Thing About Hard Things. And it's basically sort of real talk about how hard it can get in the really toughest moments of building a company, whether it's a company that's meant to stay small or a company that intends to grow really big. And then maybe more generally, the things that's been, I read a lot of blogs and certainly things that are specific to the type of business that we're in, but a lot of it has been people. And so figuring out who are I call them an investor and angel of ours calls it the red phone. When you're like really up against the wall and you don't know what to do, who's the person you're going to dial to say, you've seen this problem before, give me your advice. And I think those can fall in different categories. It could be people who know a lot about the industry you're in. It could be someone who's really good at something that you're not good at. Maybe you're great at sales, but you're not so good at marketing. Maybe you're a great engineer, but you're not good at the business side. And so being really purposeful about collecting the people around you. And then really, I think I mentioned this the last time I was here, as college students, you've got this sort of magic thing, which is your .edu email address. And it's a really powerful thing in an inbox because people will respond to you in a way that they won't respond to people who are not in college. They're excited to talk to you, they're inspired by you. The smart people know that there's a ton that they can learn from you. And so you have maybe more access than you might think from your alumni network and honestly like cold reach out on LinkedIn to find those people who can teach you something about your business that you need to learn.
Something that Lindsay actually said last time she was here that I actually could hear in my head still, you said, we have a posse of power women. And just something about that phrase, I mean, that sticks with you. And so you're kind of talking about that. It may be women, it may not, but find your posse of powerful people that are in your field or have done what you have done, so mentors or, just people that are going to be able to ask those questions to not only support you, but call and be like, I have no clue what to do. Can you help me? Right,
So in regards to books, so there's so many great and amazing business books on the market currently, and older ones, whether it's E-Myth. But I think for me, what has been the gift that kept on giving is books around leadership. And books around having difficult conversations. Because no matter what you do, you're going to find yourself having to have very difficult conversations, whether it's, being a manager and having an employee ask you for a raise and having the conversation from that end versus the one asking for the raise. All of those are difficult conversations. There's difficult conversations and who takes out the trash in your home. Like, these are all things that you have to navigate, and the better you get at doing that and pushing yourself and understanding what your negotiation style is, because that speaks to how you handle conflict, how you handle disagreements, how you handle adversity. All of that really evolves and revolves around having that skill and understanding your shortcomings as it pertains to negotiation or having difficult conversations.
I think one thing as a student that I've experienced, and maybe some of you have, is we don't always ask to be put in leadership roles, and I think you can kind of all attest to that as well. We just kind of find ourselves in leadership roles. When I first came to the college, we didn't have a radio station, and so I went to a meeting, and a couple months later, I was president and founder of SFC Radio, and that just happened. And I was like, well, wait a second. I've been naturally, I think there's a leadership quality in me, but I never took a leadership role like that. And so we hit struggles. We hit people quitting on us and not knowing how to tackle certain things. And something that we focused a lot on was do that extra step, that research, read a book about leadership, listen to a podcast about it. And one thing that really, really helped us was positive reinforcement. So you guys have been doing so good. We just want to let you know, this is the #1 show this month. And all of a sudden, you patted somebody on the back and they're doing incredible things the next month. So, that's an example that I think we can all kind of think about in our own way, but leadership books and tools, and these are things that are usually never given to us. It's stuff you have to do on your own time. You may not ever learn about it in a classroom. So take that extra step and learn about it, because that's kind of the only way you're going to learn how to be a leader. Nobody really takes a class on that, right? So does anybody else?
Even before you get to the point where you have employees and you're being a leader and you have some of these difficult conversations, I think when you're thinking about starting your business and you're thinking about how to put together that first pitch deck, to really be able to explain in an elevator pitch what your company does, what your differentiation is, how big your market is, all of those things. There are great resources out there that I always point entrepreneurs to. So the Startup Podcast is one. There's a couple of pitch podcasts out there, and looking at other people's pitch decks on SlideShare and getting inspired by the ways people tell their story. And you can't just shake out their name and stick your name, your company's name in. It's not that easy. But there are ways to go out there and see lots of different pitches and hear about lots of different pitches and hear how people tell their stories and when they're successful and when they're not. So some of the pitch competitions, even watching Shark Tank, honestly, you learn a lot from how other people pitch their businesses. So even before you get to that point of going out and running your company, when you have to start thinking about how you explain what you're doing, I think there's a lot of good podcasts and resources out there for those things as well.
So something that you said that really stuck out is the elevator pitch, and that might not be about your business, it could be about anything. Recently in one of my roles, I was asked to ask for funding for something. This was not a lot of money, it was under $100. We kind of knew it was a yes, but I had to ask. And so the person I asked said to me, well, sell me. Why do you want the money for this? Why do we need it? And I was like, I was asked, I didn't really know much about it. I was just kind of the messenger, and I was a little caught, like, I don't really know why we need the money for this. And it was like a moment for me. I said, I'm never gonna let myself be caught and not have an elevator pitch on something I'm asking for again. And so that's something that I've definitely experienced having to give the elevator pitch. So whether it's about you or your business, always have that ready and know statistics or whatever it is about your business, your story, offhand. Well, the last question that I wanted to ask you all is the biggest piece of advice that you would give female entrepreneurs. So it may vary, but if a student just said, what's the biggest thing that I can move forward with, what would that be?
I would probably say the biggest thing is to have persistence. I think any entrepreneur needs this, but especially female entrepreneurs, just expect that there's going to be obstacles that you're going to have to overcome. And I'm going to throw in a second one too, which is to really ask people for help. A lot of people that are entrepreneurial, they're very independent, they want to do things their own way, and that makes sense. But you really cannot do it completely alone. And entrepreneurs that get support from other people, whether that's making a connection for them, whether that's funding, whether that's helping them with a technical issue, those people tend to be more successful and their businesses are longer lasting. I think the biggest piece of advice I would give to female entrepreneurs, particularly involving getting funding, so there's been a really interesting study done at Columbia University by Dana Kans that found implicit bias in the way investors, male investors versus female investors, ask questions, or even many times actually all investors. So to a male founder, they'll ask, how big could this market be? Like, how big could this get? Is this like a $10 billion company? And to women, they'll ask more questions like, what's your downside risk here, right? And so they analyzed, Dana and her team analyzed a tremendous number of actual physical pitches, and they looked at words that were promotion related, so how big could this be, and how prevention related, how to prevent this company from going under. And women entrepreneurs, unsurprisingly, were asked more prevention related questions and less promotion related questions. And so my biggest advice to female founders is to know that going in, and that when you get those questions, have prepared those answers that turn it around from we won't lose money because of X, but actually this market is so big and we're the first player, and we'll turn it around to become a promotion-related answer. That's actually really hard to do, and you have to really practice, and you have to be very careful that, the way you answer those things. Actually, there's been a lot of, there's a tool online that helps you reframe those questions into answers. But I think it's one of the biggest things holding women back from getting funding at every sort of stage of the business. And so I think if you're a female entrepreneur and you do one thing, it's don't fall into that risk prevention trap that investors are kind of setting up for you unknowingly.
So I mean, there's so many, and I think these are all great for sure. When I think about being an entrepreneur, I think about being curious, and that it's really important to be curious about your industry, understanding all the different things that impact whatever you're trying to achieve. And so that, that could be in your current position as an employee, or it could be in a company that you're looking to start. But being curious about all the moving parts, understanding what the long-term impact, what does it look like, when you are at 100,000, what does it look like when you're at 250,000 in revenue, and being curious about the other companies that are similar in your space, or that have been successful. What did their growth pattern look like? So all of that, I think, really feeds your energy and your creativity in understanding what you're trying to build, and it will ultimately help you differentiate yourself in a market.
So since I'm not an entrepreneur, I'm going to give you some advice on what I think that anyone who wants to be successful in anything should be thinking about. So I read an article this weekend in the Sunday Times about women who own construction businesses. And one of the things that really resonated with me was that a lot of times they walk into a room and no one they don't believe that they're the boss, right? And it made me think, as a woman, or as a woman of color, that the one thing that I cultivate throughout my years is that when I walk into a room, I need to at least internally know myself and own my space. So I would say that whatever you feel about yourself, whether you are African American, male, female, or from a different socioeconomic class, know you belong there and own that you belong there. The other thing I would share with you that I share often with my team is that failure is going to happen. So, be comfortable with that. Understand that failure is going to happen. It's how you deal with that failure. And learn to forgive yourself quickly. That's something that has helped me throughout my life, is that, I did it, it's done. I don't want to do it again. How am I going to correct that? And then I have to let it go, because the mind space and the emotional space that you're letting take over because of something that's done and you failed is going to take away from you being better. So the two things that I want to leave you with is that, one, you need to own your space, believe in yourself, and know that you belong no matter what. And then the second is that you need to forgive yourself quickly and know that everyone fails.
That is so true. So true. I think sort of related to the failing point, the thing that we try to internalize as a team is the most important thing is that we've learned. And so failure is going to happen like literally every day. Like I failed yesterday, I'm going to fail today, I'm going to fail tomorrow. And I can't control that because I'm doing things that I've never done before. Like, I had never sold a product and now I run a sales team. I had not worked closely with lots of engineers and now we have an engineering team. And so inevitably in doing something new, you're going to do some things that don't work out. And I think the question to ask is, did I learn from it? Do I have something an idea of what I can try to do differently? Because that's like, there is not a founder on the planet, there's not an entrepreneur on the planet, there's not a successful person on the planet who's not failed regularly. I think the difference is the pace of learning. Did you take that and say, I'm going to figure out how to do this a little bit better and a little bit better and a little bit better? And that goes from like the CEOs of the biggest companies you've ever seen to famous celebrity, like that's universal. And so I think even cultivating that in school, I got a bad grade, what am I going to do differently? I didn't do well in that game, what am I going to do differently? It's like, it's literally a thing that you can do in every part of your life. And whether you're an entrepreneur or going to work in another company or work in the public sector, it's sort of part of what you need. And then I think the other piece I'd say is just like go for it. Like I think a lot of people have this idea, I had this idea that there was this like moment in time when you were a founder and you weren't a founder and like you crossed some magical threshold, like there's some magic wand and someone waves it and they're like, now you're an entrepreneur. And it's not necessarily so grand. It's like you take one step and then you take the next step. Like maybe the first thing is you have an idea and you talk to 5 friends about it. And 3 of them say that's terrible and 2 of them say that's awesome. And the people who say it's awesome, you say why? Like tell me why, what's exciting to you about it? And then the next step is you talk to 2 more people. Like these things happen piece by piece, and I think it's sort of the consistent force over time of just moving forward and trying to learn that can get you there.
So have persistence, ask for help, don't fall for gender traps that are unknowingly set, and I would say to our men, be conscious of those gender traps that you may unknowingly set. Be curious and look forward to the future. Know yourself, own the space that you're in, and know that you will fail, but forgive yourself quickly and learn from your failures. One thing that I want to add is I read a study a couple years ago about how the way women speak versus the way men speak, and the way a woman will write an email versus the way men will write an email. Women will say, I'm sorry to bother you, but. Men will say, can you tell me blah, 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 right? And so for women, I would urge, be confident. That's something I would say, no matter what you're doing, be confident in what you're doing, because if you're not, other people are not going to be confident in you as well. So be conscious of the way you talk, you conduct yourself, you write an email. You don't have to say, I'm sorry to bother you, but can you help me with this? Just ask for help.